Our greatest concern is really who pays the cost. The price of the meters are extremely expensive, and this would have to be worked out so that it would not be so burdensome on the homeowners. Time of day pricing can be very important, and I think it's something that this commission should look at, and something that we plan to hold generic hearings on even later in this year, to get some of the public reaction and what they really want to do with time of day pricing.
How long would it take to implement this time of day pricing?
Well, actually, I think it would take at least a year or maybe a year and a half, because you do have to put new meters on all of the homes, and this is not something that can be done overnight.
The subject of teacher pay raises is a hot subject these days. Ever since Governor Fob James announced his war on illiteracy plan, educators have been upset, wondering why the plan does not include a pay raise for teachers. Tomorrow morning, the teachers will meet on the steps of the state capitol, petitioning the governor to reconsider the raise. Alabama Education Association President John Landers says teacher morale is low and that a strike is not being discussed, although it may be a last resort.
Teachers and, of course, state employees, too, are quite alarmed at not having raises included. Inflation is eating up what savings they might have accumulated over the last several years, and teachers are to the point that they've got to have a raise, and I'm sure state employees are in the same situation. And of course, that would be the ultimate in a demonstration of dissatisfaction, and I would not rule that out, though I would think that would be a last resort to call attention to the plight of teachers in the state.
The matter of a pay hike will come up for debate this week when the House considers the education bill. Last week, Speaker Joe McCorkadale said if taxes are increased, it's because of a pay raise. But not all legislators agree. One of those scheduled to address the teachers is Representative Cecil Wyatt, who says a pay raise is feasible without increasing taxes. That news should bring cheers from the thousands of teachers expected to attend tomorrow's rally. From the state capitol, Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
The first briefing was with administration leaders this morning, like Jody Powell and Alfred Kahn. Later, President Carter and Governor Fob James met for a private talk. Governor James and others came away from the day's activities impressed with the functions of the administration.
The gist of it is that we've got to be very disciplined. We've got to stop spending money in an unwise way. Government has got to stop spending. The budget must be balanced. The president is trying to do that, and we're going to sure try to support him from Alabama.
Did he ask you for a little help on gasoline rationing? Suggest maybe you install your own program or anything like that?
He did not. We didn't have the time to get into the detail of a matter of that nature. He expressed concern and regret that Congress turned down his request yesterday to design a rationing plan. But that was the extent of our conversation about gas rationing.
The president asked you about your austerity program at home. What did you tell him?
Told him doing the best I could, and I thought we had a very constructive legislature, and they would be very constructive in that sense.
Of course, I was very much impressed with Fred Cohn, and I think everyone was, trying to get a handle on inflation. I found him to be a very, very forthright and a factual man, and I feel much better with him taking the lead in the battle against inflation. I hope we can have him in Alabama, frankly, to speak to a joint session of the House and the Senate.
Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News in Washington.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we still have a minute or so before 9, but in glancing around, I believe that everyone's present, and let me still feel that the sanction imposed for 2 years in football, it should also be pointed out that there are no findings other than violation of the three-contact rule, which involved present members of the Auburn football and basketball coaching staffs. Even in the case of the three-contact violations, no present coaching staff member personally exceeded the contact limit. We feel that it is important that only 2 violations in the findings involve student athletes who have been members of the university's intercollegiate football team, 1 former player and 1 presently enrolled. All other findings, both in football and basketball, concern individuals who did not accept Auburn grant and aid and who participated in intercollegiate athletics at other institutions.
This makes it difficult, and I don't and do not intend to take the posture here this morning of criticizing the NCAA. In another situation where there are 5 findings in basketball, Coach Smith, in this instance, the representative of the university's interest emphatically denied the allegations. The young man with whom the allegations were involved was in Italy, participating in some sort of a semi-pro league. The young man's mother, who was also prominent in the allegations, was given to us as a Mrs. Brown in a city in this state, a black woman, if you please, no address, a telephone number which when we tried to call repeatedly was disconnected. And I know that you as members of the press and certainly investigatory people that from time to time in your profession, you know the difficulty of attempting to find a woman named only as Mrs. Brown with no address.
I wish I could answer how it will affect our play. I do not know, but I do know this, that if we sit around and mope and let it affect our play, our attitude, our morale, and we're not the kind of folks that I think we should be. I would hope that our team would band together and be more determined and exert more effort. And, you know, I'm just anxious to shoot the play. I'm so tired of this. I don't know what to do, and I'm ready to, you know, play and practice and tee it up, and I hope our players are.
Ruled by the institution ineligible when there has been a violation found involving him. And this is a violation of a constitutional provision of the NCAA regulations. In the case of Marshall Riley, there is the violation of a bylaw provision, a recruiting inducement, and NCAA addresses only postseason eligibility. In all instances, NCAA does not rule the student athlete ineligible.
We're looking for a young black male described by witnesses as being 5 feet 6 inches in height, or approximately. Very dark in complexion, and they emphasize the very dark. Approximately 120 pounds, wearing a golf-type, blue jean-type material cap, either a brown or a blue shirt and blue jean pants. He left the scene on foot and was seen in the company of some other black males who we know by name at this time. We're making an attempt this morning to pick them up for questioning.
Do you have a name of the suspect?
We do not at this time. However, we feel confident that we'll come up with something before the day's end, due to the fact that our excellent witnesses on the scene provided names of people that were seen with this individual yesterday, before and after the robbery.
A fine gentleman, a good Christian, tried to help and serve the people. Any information you have or leads, if you will call the secret witness number or call me at the Salvation Army 265-0281. We certainly would appreciate it.
The economy and the SALT treaty dominated most of the day for the state officials. During 2 briefings, the delegation learned the cold, hard facts of a strategic arms limitation treaty with the Soviet Union and the curse of inflation.
Do you think this was an overly political trip? A lot of them mentioned they think that SALT, too, was the main reason they came up here.
Well, if that were the reason, then, of course, I suppose that I'm the person that they're directing their attention towards, because Senator Stewart and I will be the 2 Alabamians that will have to vote on the question of whether the SALT II treaty will be confirmed or ratified. I'm studying it. I want to look at it from an open mind, but they're going to have to do a lot of proving to me that we can monitor the Russians, and they'll have to prove to me beyond a reasonable doubt that we won't give up a superiority in sophisticated strategic weapons that we now hold.
Oh, well, they gave us a hard sell on SALT, too. As a matter of fact, I think that was probably the main reason we were here. I've got a lot more selling to do before I buy it, but I need a lot more selling. But that, I think, was probably the main reason, the main purpose of the gathering was to sell SALT, too.
I just hope that if the SALT treaty does pass, that it will be verifiable. That's the only thing that worries me about it, is that the Russians might not live up to their agreements. And I think that if we could be sure that they would, then I would be for it. But I just have great reservations about their honesty in their dealings with us.
President Carter's chief inflation fighter, Alfred Kahn, must have made an impression upon many in the delegation.
I've been working head-to-head and toe-to-toe with the members of the government for the last year and a half in agriculture, and I run into the same thing that was discussed here today, that if you alleviate the problems in agriculture, you complicate the problems for consumers in certain areas. So it was really a rerun, yet I did receive some additional information, and I was let know from the top level what is trying to be done, and that they're trying to do what is fair for all sectors of America, and that is what I'm in favor of.
I was very impressed with Mr. Kahn and his remarks about inflation, and I think it's going to, that if in order to cure inflation, we're going to all have to exercise restraint, just as he said, in our spending and everything else.
I would not say it was political. The entire program was much more substantive than I had anticipated. It was very informative, and I would say that the primary thing that I gained from being here was having a better appreciation for the personalities, the kind of human talents and values that the people who are in the positions of greatest responsibility in this country have.
2nd District Congressman Bill Dickinson was not a part of the delegation, but he too had some timely comments about both inflation and the President's SALT treaty. More on that tomorrow.
Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the White House.
Well, I could say facetiously that he cried all night because, but very seriously, it was a severe setback for him, and I think for the prestige of the administration. Nobody intended it that way, but it was a very slipshod piece of legislation. It was very difficult to sell because nobody knew really what was involved. It was said that the farmers, for instance, would be taken care of, but it wasn't written into the legislation. It sort of amounted to, well, take it on faith, but there was no guarantee in there that whether you were sowing your crop, whether you were gathering your crop, whether you were drying your crop or getting it to processing it to get to the market, you didn't know how it was to be. There were inequities among states. There was inequities when to say that if I've got 3 automobiles in a home, that I can have 3 times as much gasoline as that fellow right there that can't afford but 1 automobile. So there were a lot of things that weren't thought through. It was a bad piece of legislation, and I was very pleased that it was defeated.
What attempts, or what do you think will be the administration's plan of action now to get some sort of standby rationing plan? How much will they have to compromise?
Well, after being so resoundingly defeated, but it was over 80 votes that it went down by, they've gone back to the drafting board now to see what they can salvage, and I'm sure that we will be 6 months before I would think that they could come up with another plan that could be presented to the House that would have some chance of passage. I don't look for anything anytime soon, even though we do have a serious problem. The problem was that this rationing plan, it didn't produce any gasoline, it didn't create anything, and to say that you could have stamps that you could sell to somebody else if you didn't need yours, that you could just go into the market and sell, creating a quote white market instead of a black market for gasoline. I think it was very poorly thought out and planned, and I don't think that the administration will be back anytime soon with a plan.
They came from almost every county in Alabama, young and old, black and white. They call themselves the foot soldiers of the war on illiteracy, and they say their general isn't supporting the troops' cry for more money. It was hot in front of the Capitol, and some succumbed to the heat. But most of the teachers raised their voices high with a loud no when asked if they were willing to stop at today's rally. Alabama Education Association President John Landers.
I think the future of education in the state of Alabama depends on those people here. We need to make the public aware of what's going on. We're the professionals. You need to let your legislators and the governor know how you feel. The decisions are made in this white building behind me, the state capitol. I think it's quite obvious that the teachers in the state of Alabama are committed to fighting illiteracy and to eradicating it completely in the state. But we need some help.
Executive Secretary Joe Reed said politicians are to blame for the bleak outlook.
It was Thomas Paine who said, "These are the times to try men's souls." And I say today, these are the times that will test teachers' ingenuity and will test teachers' courage. It will say to the people of Alabama whether we are willing to stick around and let politicians mistreat us while they fund their own pocketbooks.
Others addressed the crowd, including several legislators who said there is money available for a pay raise. Executive Director Paul Hubbard took the podium, announcing the governor would meet with the AEA Board of Directors after the rally to discuss the situation. The crowd applauded the news, later shouting they would not give up their fight to get the governor to reconsider the matter. The meeting lasted more than an hour and a half, with several educators saying James appeared sympathetic, but still firm on his position. When asked about the money several legislators say is available for a pay raise, the governor replied with an invitation.
I hope those legislators will show me, will come down here Tuesday and show us where that $30-odd million exists. If that can be done, that would be wonderful.
Executive Director Paul Hubbard could not be located after the meeting for comment. The issue is far from resolved, but the debate continues Tuesday when the House considers the education bill, presently without a teacher pay raise. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
Well, the President and also the Senate Subcommittee on Aging and also the House Committee on Aging, we work all week, concern many bills in many areas of health, insurance, Medicare and Medicaid. But it's going to take a long time before this bills come to realization, actually. But we got to hope. And today, the President kind of gave me a good feeling that he is a great president. And I do believe in all sincerity, we're going to support. I had a hesitation before whether I like it or not, but I think the country needs a leadership, and I think he has it.
Low-income blacks live in the two-lane court housing project between Adams Avenue and High Street. Around 6:45 last night, two police department investigators attempted to pick up 19-year-old Lorenzo Rayner of North Union Circle for questioning in connection with the Thursday shooting of Henry Wilhoit, a Salvation Army employee. Police say Rayner began cursing the officers and resisted their efforts to talk with him. When they tried to arrest him, a fight ensued. Rayner reportedly tried to get one of the officers' guns. He was hit on the head, but police say it's unclear if the blow was delivered by a hand, a gun, or a nightstick. A couple of motorcycle officers arrived on the scene and aided in completing the arrest. There were rumors that Rayner had been severely beaten, but Major C.D. Sherlin says that is untrue.
A lot of rumors that the individual was severely beaten. This is not true. I think he ended up with
3 stitches at the emergency room at St. Margaret's, and he was back home with his family at midnight.
Around 7:30, a crowd began gathering on Hall Street, which runs through the two-lane court project. Bricks, rocks, and bottles were thrown at cars, mostly occupied by whites. 17 complaints were filed with police. There were no reports of injuries. Hall Street was closed between Adams and High. Police say the situation soon quieted down and rain helped disperse the crowd by 9 o'clock. Tulane Court appeared to be back to normal today. A community cleanup was in progress because of the Montgomery Housing Authority strike. Sergeant John Anderson is the community relations officer with the Montgomery Police Department. He says thugs started last night's incident, and the majority of the neighborhood had nothing to do with it.
Well, they wasn't the young people that we know as being young people like we got here today, but more or less a roving gang of hoodlums and thugs who have dominated this community for a long time. And last night was just a climax, should I say it come to a head last night when these officers out here investigating the murder case and had some altercations with a gentleman who didn't want to cooperate and do what he's supposed to do as far as, being a responsible citizen, cooperating with police.
Lorenzo Rayner was charged with 2 counts of assault and battery and was released from the city jail. Montgomery police and the residents of Tulane Court are hoping there won't soon be a repeat of the violence that marred their neighborhood last night. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News. Bluegrass music has enjoyed a revival in popularity during the last few years. Bluegrass festivals have become major entertainment and money-making attractions. The Millbrook JCs have put on 12 festivals over the last 7 years. And the people, well, they keep coming back. There were 5,000 bluegrass fans here Saturday night, and despite the rain Sunday afternoon, a sizable crowd braved the showers while music filled the air. Not all of the music, however, was on the stage. Bands were playing all around the camping area. The Millbrook Bluegrass Festival has become something of a tradition. And with a tradition, you really don't have to say too much about it. Just let it speak for itself. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News at the Millbrook Bluegrass Festival.
Light, camera.
Okay. Hello there. This is the first time I've had Mr. Cottonball. Hello there. Hello. Well, for the third time, I think it gets a little better every time. After you've carried one for 9 months, to have it is special, and then on a day that's all yours is even more special.
It's good nurse. She had found that colored.
How would you like to be able to forget about doing this and instead do this? That's what Mr. and Mrs. Fred Roush of Montgomery do when they want to take a drive in their electric car. The 1975 City car runs entirely on electricity stored beneath the seats in 6 batteries. It has a steel frame with a fiberglass body and none of the luxuries other cars boast of, primarily air conditioning, heat, and a radio. The couple uses the car for in-town driving, mostly for running errands. Mrs. Roush says it's a good feeling knowing you don't have to stop for gas.
We enjoy it. It's a lot of fun to drive.
Do people give you a lot of weird looks out on the road?
Yes, they do, and they even yell, "No gas," and things like that.
Does it cost a lot to keep the car running?
No, we think it costs about 1 cent a mile for the electricity that it takes to charge the batteries.
Do you use it often?
Well, we use it several times a week at least to go to the shopping center, over to my mother's close by.
Is it more of a city-type car than a long-distance type car?
Yes, it will only go about 40 miles on a charge, so you couldn't drive very far.
The couple purchased the car just 3 months ago when it had 65 miles on the odometer. Now it sports 148 miles. They paid $1,100 for the vehicle and have had at least one offer to sell the red wedge-shaped car, but they've said no way. Is this the car of the future?
I think some type of electric car is. It probably needs some changes from this, but we're enjoying this one anyway.
What are the major drawbacks in driving a car like this one?
Of course, it doesn't have very much pickup, but it will go 35 miles an hour. Then another drawback, I suppose, is the fact that it rides a little bit rough if your road is rough. On smooth pavement, though, it's perfect.
Mrs. Roush says at the moment the electric car may not be paying for itself considering the limited distance the vehicle can travel. But as gasoline prices continue to rise, she likes the car more and more. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
Inflation is an ever-hungry curse upon the American monetary system. Many say the cause of inflation is government spending more than it takes in, forcing the manufacturing of money. Congressman Bill Dickinson of Alabama says part of the problem lies with the government, but part of the solution is in the hands of the American public in accepting some sacrifices.
The basic problem, the root cause of inflation and what we're facing in this country today is deficit government spending. Spending more than we have year after year, $40 billion each year. For the past 2 years, we've spent more than we take in. We are working on a budget this year with a built-in, with an acknowledged $32 billion deficit. And as long as we continue to spend, then where does the money come from? It's printing press money. We have to go out and borrow, which runs up interest rates, which means that the government is competing with banks and other lending institutions, which means that everything that you buy that you have to finance, whether it's an automobile or a home or whatever, it's going to cost more because the interest rates are up. And until we are willing to tighten our belt, to cut back and to receive less government, in whatever area it comes, whether it's education, whether it's in highway construction, whether it's in pensions, whether it's in salaries, until we're willing for the government to spend less and not more, we're not going to come to grips with this.
President Carter is pushing his new strategic arms limitation treaty with the Russians. He has chosen to let the measure be ratified by the Senate as a treaty and not by both houses as an executive agreement. Dickinson has some strong feelings about that treaty and says we should learn from past SALT mistakes.
The question is now, do we in SALT II again lock ourselves into an inferior position and allow the Russians to continue to make advances through their technology and otherwise that we don't have? For instance, our B-52 is counted as a strategic weapons carrier in the total numbers. their backfire bomber is not, because they claim that it's not an intercontinental ballistic or nuclear carrier. Well, I know that it does have an intercontinental capability, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's refueled or not. It's capable of flying from Russia to any place in the United States and beyond. I think that it should be included. And this is one of a number of areas that I think that we are shortchanging ourselves, and at the present time I would not support it.
The congressman says he would like an opportunity to vote on SALT too, but he's not in favor of changing the Constitution to allow the House to vote on treaties. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News, Washington.
It was fine. The governor was very kind and gracious in his comments on his trip to Washington last week and his visit with the president, so that was good. And it also was an opportunity for me to discuss his perspective of the politics of the country as it relates to Alabama.
Did he give you any encouragement as far as organizing your efforts here in this state?
Oh, I didn't look for that kind of thing. It wasn't a political trip in that sense. It was a trip to Alabama to visit our supporters, and in deference, the governor wanted to speak to him.
What will you be doing in the next few weeks in regard to Alabama? The primary is coming up very shortly.
Hopefully, the folks that I spoke with today and many of our supporters that I simply don't have the opportunity to speak with in a few hours will be able to begin the network of organization politically and financially in the state for the campaign, and we will begin to have our field organization come and visit.
Dr. Paul Hubbard, Executive Secretary of the Alabama Education Association, also by law serves as the ex officio Secretary of the Alabama Teachers Tenure Commission, and he also serves as an ex officio member of the Teachers Retirement Board of Control. State Representative Larry Dixon of Montgomery has passed through the House a bill that will remove Hubbard as the ex officio Secretary of the Tenure Commission and place that job with the Secretary of State.
The Alabama Education Association is not a state agency. It is a special interest group. The Tenure Commission is a state agency working in the public interest for the state of Alabama. Now, when you have the executive director of a private interest or special interest group keeping the official proceedings of an official state agency, and the official actions of that agency in his special interest group office, it just smacks of a conflict of interest to me.
Hubbard doesn't seem to be overly concerned about the legislation, and in fact he points out that he is serving because the law requires him to.
I serve because the legislature placed me there, and I assume if they wanted to take me off, they could do that.
The law could be changed, but if it's not, there's still a question of ethics. WSFA TV News has learned that the State Ethics Commission has been asked for an opinion on Hubbard's position with the Retirement Board. The request asks if it's a conflict of interest on the part of Hubbard to actively oppose or support legislation dealing with teachers' retirement at the same time he serves on the Teachers' Retirement Board of Control. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Hundreds of state employees drive state cars in their work each day. The tags on state cars are usually the green tag with an S. The tags are easily identifiable by state taxpayers. Dr. Brunner's memo is aimed at state workers who are known to abuse the use of state motor vehicles by replacing the green tag with switch or cover tags. The tags were designed for law enforcement personnel. State Trooper Colonel Jerry Shoemaker.
Does the State Department of Public Safety use
switch or cover tags?
Yes, they do.
Do you have any idea how many this department might use?
It would be determined by the investigations themselves and the number of investigators within the department.
Sources say some workers switch tags and use the cars to drive to the lake on weekends, to shop in, and for many other activities while using taxpayers' gasoline and vehicles. A recent audit of the Alabama Development Office revealed approximately 10 state-owned cars carried private tags. The Alabama Code 1975 says all state cars will carry tags with the letter S stamped on them. At this point, Finance Director Brunner wants a list of all the tags and the reason for their use. Until there's a response, no one knows, not even Brunner, just how many switch or cover tags exist, or who is driving a state car disguised as a private vehicle, and who is not a law enforcement officer. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Well, I think it's even worse than I had feared. It's a bad treaty. It could have been a great deal better. It locks the United States into a position of permanent inferiority from which we simply can't extricate ourselves, if in fact it's ratified, and that's the problem with it. And it also signals to the rest of the world the Soviet Union is now number one and we're number two, and that we've accepted that situation and will simply follow the line where we have to.
How can we be assured that the Soviets are keeping their side of the bargain?
Well, we can't. We're only asking for necessary amounts, certain amounts of verification, and frankly, they can cheat on any number of issues. They can cheat on the number of missiles they have. They can cheat on the testing of their missiles. They can cheat on the number of warheads per launcher which they have. There's any number of ways, and there's nothing we can do about it.
But unfortunately, the story was about some people who lived directly across the street. And I hadn't bothered to change anything in it at all. And I don't think that the children's editor of this Mobile Register quite realized what this story was about, because, I mean, it would have made Faulkner blush. I don't know that I knew what it was about. However, they printed it, and as a result, the people across the street didn't speak to any of my family for 14 years.
According to Congressman Phil Crane, there's a shell game going on in Washington. Congress grants a tax cut for Americans, but in reality, it's just tax relief from new taxes assessed in other ways. Taxes and government spending are two of the subjects Crane speaks out against in his bid for the presidency. Those two subjects were also the reason 250 persons came to the organizational meeting of the Tri-State Taxpayers Association. Crane painted a gloomy picture of the nation's economical future if excessive government spending continues.
Of course, many of us, and I'm sure all of you in this room, have been fighting this battle in behalf of trying to put some curb and restraint on government. And I'm convinced further that you, like the overwhelming majority of Americans, know that in your own lives you can't spend yourself into prosperity, that you cannot continue to run escalating debt and somehow manage to stay ahead of events, that it will ultimately produce chaos in your personal lives, and any businessman will tell you that if he is chronically running deficits, he's not going to be in business very long.
Crane called the present system taxation with misrepresentation, noting 43% of what Americans work for now goes to pay for the enormous federal bureaucracy. Crane urged the crowd to fight back and change the current situation. They answered with a standing ovation. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News, Dothan.
The district attorneys of Alabama.
Now, we think that a person at 16 years of age has the capacity to determine that taking a pistol and walking into a pack-a-sack store and blowing somebody's brains out, he has a sufficient capacity at 16 to know that's not right. We believe that. That's our philosophy. We think he understands that.
The laws of the state of Alabama are more than adequate to deal with these young people. There is a transfer provision that exists in the law that says that any child 14 years of age or older who commits a serious violation of the law and who has shown that he is not amenable to the treatment provided within the juvenile court system can be transferred to the adult court. This is not being done.
This news conference was to announce the results in 4 grades of the California Achievement Test. Hubbard said the results had been out for a week, although he said he received his copy today. Hubbard accused the James administration of withholding the test results so that the $20 million program could get into the education budget. According to Hubbard's figures, students in the 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 8th grades are close to, and in some cases above, the national average in reading, math, language, and spelling. The average 2nd grader was reading on a 2.7 level. Hubbard suggested that $20 million be spent elsewhere.
It seems to me that the legislature is being deprived of information which would be very vital in its consideration of whether or not to reward the teachers who are obviously doing a good job in the classroom, or whether or not to adopt the so-called $20 million War on Illiteracy plan.
This afternoon, the governor's educational advisor, Dr. Bob Lager, responded to Hubbard's charges.
Dr. Hubbard gave you the means, and that's an average. He gave you the average, and the figures he gave you are quite true. The average 2nd grader in Alabama reads on the 2.7 level. That's fine. I couldn't be more happy about that. But we've got to know what the under average and the over average children are doing.
Lager says he agrees that school teachers need a raise in pay, but so does just about everyone else. Unfortunately, the money isn't there. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
Several hundred pro-labor demonstrators gathered around the Capitol in anticipation of debate on the prevailing wage bill. Union construction workers came from most sections of the state to tell the lawmakers they do not want the board eliminated. That law requires contractors to pay the prevailing wage on state construction projects. Proponents of the bill say the board drives up the cost of state construction projects. Those against the bill say abolition of the panel would force workers onto welfare rolls. Across the hall, the House acted on many bills on its long calendar. One which passed 79-0 would allow persons elected to the Public Service Commission to take office the day after the general election in which they were elected. Several finance-related bills made it through floor debate. Under a bill passed, the financial records of a customer of a bank organized under Alabama law shall be disclosed only in response to a subpoena, summons, warrant, or court order. Unanimous approval was also given to a House bill which would require certain annual audits be made of banks. On Wednesday, most committees of the House and Senate will be busy. The House Health Committee will conduct public hearings on 2 bills which would allow generic substitutes for prescription drugs. That hearing begins at 9 in the House chamber. A teacher pay raise bill is still in the works. Representative Pete Turnham of Auburn says he's drafting one which would obtain its revenues from removing the sales tax exemptions from various products and services. Turnham says he does not know when that bill will be introduced. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
250 some odd employees for the state of Alabama showed up at this meeting today. There was talk of a takeover of the Alabama State Employees Association by union attorney Richard Schenbaum. He told the state employees that the ASEA had not done its job, had not gotten its raise, and is not representing the state employees like it should. Schenbaum also warned news reporters and photographers not to take pictures of employees here.
You can take pictures of anyone on this stand, but the minute one picture is taken of one state employee, we will have to ask the press to leave.
In the organizational meeting, they voted themselves something like a 75% increase. And I tell you, as long as politicians do that kind of thing in this state, and then say to the people that slaves that do the work, that runs the government, there's no increase for you. That will never work. And the 28,000 or so government employees that work for the state of Alabama in this state are, as I put it, the slaves to politicians, to anybody that wants to use you or abuse you.
After the initial call for people to join the union and to get other people to listen to what the union proposals are, it boiled down to a pep talk from union organizers, specifically attorney for the union, Richard Schenbaum. He talked about the Fob James administration. He talked about the Alabama State Employees Association and asked the workers who belong to that association to take over the association. However, it's impossible to do that until November, when the association has new elections. What will happen from this meeting is not known at this time. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Civic Center.
Most of the city council meeting was spent discussing last week's incident at Tulane Court. In his address, Mayor Falmer defended the actions of the police force in arresting a young black man wanted for questioning in connection with the Thursday murder.
Sergeant Anderson in particular has been called everything. Well, one, Freddie Fox said that, and I heard the tape, he said Chief Swindle and I had a slave mentality and Sergeant John Anderson was our house nigger. Now that's what he said about that fine police officer standing right there. Then a member of this council from District 4 has the audacity to say that Montgomery Mayor and the police, Chief Swindle and the police department are goons. Now, they can call me anything they want to. I'm big enough to take it. But the police department is not made up of goons, but the finest bunch of men and women I have ever been caused to associate with in my life, and I resent that slur to the core.
District 4 Councilwoman Catherine Caswell asked why the mayor must carry a gun in the city of Montgomery, and Councilman Joe Reed refuted claims he was in the housing project at the time of the arrest to, quote, stir up trouble. When the meeting was later opened for public comments, nearly 20 city residents spoke on the situation, including Representative Alvin Holmes and John Knight.
Mayor Falmer, I think you, an honorable mayor, with all integrity vested in you in that particular office. So when you stand before this body and tell them that those officers out there Friday night had no more weapons than what the officers that are sitting in this council have on tonight, then there's some reasons for question. I witnessed with my own eyes. Councilman Reed was there, news reporters were there, and there were shotguns and rifles and you name it. There were not sidearms.
What action the city council will take now in the wake of the public interest in the situation is not known. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News. This was the scene this morning in a Prattville discotheque as couples danced to the latest disco hits. The 400 persons grinding and grooving to the beat are 4- and 5-year-olds from the KinderCare centers in Montgomery and Prattville. According to Prattville Center Director Doris Fisher, each participant received the necessary $1.50 entrance fee from a sponsor. All of the money is going to support the fight against muscular dystrophy. Discotheque owners Steve Wainwright and Don Strength donated the facility and records. On hand for the dance was last year's poster child, Mark Whetstone, and Muscular Dystrophy District Director Terry Overstreet. In addition to raising money for a worthwhile cause, the children spent the hour and a half on the dance floor working on their technique, because you never know when John Travolta may need a new partner or a replacement. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
The 98-page audit report outlines illegal practices ranging from loans and advances to individuals to city gas for the private cars of Mayor William Payton, the city clerk, the fire chief, and the police chief. The practice of gasoline usage and private car repair and maintenance occurred between 1974 and 1977, when city councilmen voted to let the officials use private cars rather than buy city cars, which auditors say is a violation of Alabama law. The mayor has repaid approximately $300 to the city for car repairs that auditors found to be illegal. Auditors discovered that from October 1976 to May 1978, Mayor Payton obtained 1,550 gallons of gas for his private car and truck. The investigators also report there was no way to know whether the gas was used for city or private business. A year ago, last May, auditors say the mayor was assigned a city car, but that Payton still obtained taxpayers' gasoline from the city pump for use in his private car. The mayor was not in when we called on him at City Hall here in Sylacauga today. He was gone for the day at noon. Further efforts to reach him were unsuccessful. The city's landfill operation deal with contractor Ed Bentley drew severe criticism from auditors. Over a period of 4 years, Bentley's fee for operating the city's garbage dump jumped to more than $8,000 every 30 days. Several of the increases were not recorded anywhere in city records, according to the audit. One increase from $3,500 to $8,900 a month, an increase of 154%, was done once again without a vote taken by the city council. The auditor's report revealed the possibility of violations of at least 16 Alabama laws, some bringing as much as 10 years in the Alabama penitentiary system. In our next report, the Parks and Recreations audit. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, Sylacauga.
The governor took a defensive stance when questioned about the validity of his war on illiteracy.
There are some 100 to 150,000 youngsters in this state right now in grammar school that are not learning to read and write, to spell and add and subtract. And I know that as those youngsters go into high school, that they aren't going to be able to pass in high school, to go to college or hold a job. And when I hear, I see people playing raw politics for any group, propagandizing, which is an honest, sincere effort to get to the bottom of this thing, or say that we ought to do away with a $20 million program for 1 year, $20 million out of $1.2 billion for the children of Alabama, then I say that person is out of order, he doesn't know any better, or he's afraid of something. I don't know what it is he's afraid of. Maybe some people don't want the light of day to shine in so that we all know what the story is, or where we don't want to make this accountable.
Who designed this program of the war on illiteracy? Dr. Hubbard seems to think it was Mr. Walker out of Memphis.
I don't know where this fellow Hubbard gets his information. Fob James designed that program in concert with Bob Lager here, who's my education consultant, and Wayne Teague over at the State Department of Education. And DeLoss Walker's a fine public relations man. I think he's been in Alabama once since the election. And, along these lines, a strange thing. He played a role in my campaign, did a good job with television, and this fellow that you mentioned went up to Memphis after that, and I think tried to hire DeLoss Walker to come down here and help his image. I think if you look that up, you'll find it to be a fact, and I would say to that individual, if he'd tell the truth, he wouldn't need to worry about his image.
James talked on many topics during our interview. More on those other subjects tomorrow. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News in the governor's office.
So
still not very firm. I mean, you can't really say what some of the alternatives might be. And the fact that you really do, you increase drastically the likelihood of cake spillage and breakage.
4 plus 2 equals 6. Clear.
We're going to have a truck stumble over.
Where people use this facility.
We've been told by the National Library Service of the Library of Congress that we do have the prototype building for library service to this special group. We've even received an award in Alabama from the Central Alabama Rehabilitation Service as a barrier-free building.
Well, I was swinging, you know, I was playing against Kansas City and fouled the ball off, and it went straight down, hit me right on top of the foot.
Those things usually hurt bad, but they don't break bones. Just a freak thing, huh?
Yes, I thought it was a bad bruise in the beginning, and it happened that Tuesday, and I didn't get it examined until that Saturday, and I found out I had a broke bone in it.
How long is it going to keep you out?
Well, I'm supposed to come back, I think, June the 1st. I can start back working out there. So, you know, this is going to be on there about a month, and I'm going to take some time, you know, to get my timing back, and after that, I can start back playing.
You decided to come home just to get away from things and rest?
Well, yes, you know, I was looking forward to coming home. I'm, glad to get a chance to come home, but the way it happened, I think I was off to a pretty good start. And
You were DHing, what are you, against right-handed pitching, or have you been playing all the time, or what?
No, I was just DHing against right-hand pitching. At the beginning of that season, Pat Roberts, he told me that, he's the manager, he told me if I started hitting, real good, that he would let me play every day. So I was swinging the bat pretty good at the time, and I think I was going to start playing every day, and got the broke bone in.
The Rangers doing good. They're right now battling with Minnesota. With your high salary, have you had any problems with the other guys on the team? I read someplace where one guy said, you were taking up a lot of the salary budget and everything. Has that been a problem?
No, it hasn't been a problem. I ain't had no trouble out of salary this year. Last year it was a problem, but this year, everything been cool, and ain't nobody been talking about it. Got a lot of guys on the team making a lot of money, so it ain't been.
So you're kind of one of the guys, huh?
Yeah, I'm one of the guys, and
no, you're not.
Started out hitting the ball pretty good, so the press and stuff, they ain't got on me yet, so.
Most of the 70 maintenance workers who have stayed off their jobs for the last 3 weeks were present for the special meeting. They came to see whether the 5-member Housing Authority Board would recognize the union the workers claimed they are now a part of. It wasn't long before they got their answer, a strong no. Attorney Oakley Melton Jr. told the board and the workers the Housing Authority operates under city and county personnel policies which do not allow employees to collectively bargain through a union. Many of those employees away from work have been terminated under Personnel Department regulations, but Board Chairman Jess Griffin said the job action will no longer affect Housing Authority tenants.
Hoping the concerns of the maintenance employees can be resolved, and the board could then give immediate consideration to applications for reinstatement. If this is not possible, then we have no alternative but to proceed with the replacement employees in order to restore normal maintenance service for the tenants. One way or another, we are going to restore normal, regular maintenance service for the tenants of this authority.
Board member John Knight said the situation could have been avoided and made a motion to recognize the union. The motion died for lack of a second. Union attorney Charles Price pointed out the workers have only 2 choices now: stay off their jobs or return to work. But it was International Representative Bart Bartlett who warned the board of the consequences of not recognizing the union.
Take it upon yourself to govern these people when you don't care whether they live or whether they eat or not. I'm thinking about these 70 people we got out here on strike.
Chairman Griffin made a motion to deny recognition to the organization, which was quickly seconded and momentarily passed with board member John Knight opposing. Bartlett again became vocal, shouting the job action would intensify. The workers without jobs had no alternatives left but to agree. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
public taxes fund this community center at Sylacauga, Alabama, auditors say a private catering firm determines who uses the kitchen here at the Craig Smith Community Center. Documents also show that Hudgens Catering Service was the only catering service allowed to use the center's kitchen. The firm also stores its supplies here. Auditors concluded the Parks and Recreations Board allowed a private business to operate within a public facility without a contract or bidding, a violation of Alabama law. The auditors say the situation here amounts to subsidizing a private firm. Other irregularities found by auditors include inadequate record keeping, unsigned minutes of meetings, and records were found to be kept in a loose leaf folder. The auditor's final report shows at least 12 violations of state law by Parks and Recreations personnel. One of the most serious violations appears to be the paying of vendors without proof that merchandise was ever delivered. Efforts to reach Parks officials for comment were unsuccessful. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, Sylacauga, Alabama.
You may not have seen this many shiny shoes since patent leather was in style. Men and women wearing uniforms from all divisions of the armed services were honored today. Governor Fob James gave 19 awards for outstanding military service in Alabama. He stressed the necessity of a strong military.
A strong military spirit is necessary because if you don't have it, the United States will not remain a country of free men and women. It is that simple.
The governor added that he appreciates the efforts of all military personnel who serve in Alabama. Armed Forces Week lasts through Saturday. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
This is a weekly cash benefit to compensate the person for loss of earnings. And this ranges from a minimum of $71 a week to $90 per week, depending on what that person's earnings were.